I saw my father for the last time in 1916. He was then 82 years old, still full of health and strength. The few recent grey hairs in his beard were hardly noticeable. His life ended a year later, but not from natural causes. This event, sorrowful and grievous for all who knew him, and especially so for me, occurred during the last great periodic human psychosis. At the time of the Turkish attack on Alexandropol, when the family had to flee, he was unwilling to leave his homestead to the mercy of fate, and while protecting the family property he was wounded by the Turks. He died soon after and was buried by some old men who happened to remain there. The texts of the various legends and songs he had written or dictated, which, in my opinion, would have been his most fitting memorial, were lost, to the misfortune of all thinking people, during the repeated sackings of our house. Yet, perhaps by some miracle, a few hundred of the songs he sang, recorded on phonograph rolls, may still be preserved among the things I left in Moscow. It will be a great pity for those who value the old folklore if these records cannot be found. The individuality and intellectuality of my father can, in my opinion, be very well pictured in the mind's eye of the reader, if I quote here a few of his many favourite subjective sayings which he often used in conversation. In this connection it is interesting to remark that I, as well as many others, noticed that when he himself used these sayings in conversation, it always seemed to every hearer that they could not have been more apt or better put, but that if anyone else made use of them, they seemed to be entirely beside the point or improbable nonsense. Some of these subjective sayings of his were as follows. Without salt, no sugar. Ashes come from burning. The cassock is to hide a fool. He is deep down because you are high up. If the priest goes to the right, then the teacher must without fail turn to the left. If a man is a coward, it proves he has will. A man is satisfied not by the quantity of food, but by the absence of greed. Truth is that from which conscience can be at peace. No elephant and no horse, even the donkey is mighty. In the dark a louse is worse than a tiger. If there is I in one's presence, then God and devil are of no account. Once you can shoulder it, it's the lightest thing in the world. A representation of hell, a stylish shoe. Unhappiness on earth is from the wiseacring of women. He is stupid who is clever. Happy is he who sees not his unhappiness. The teacher is the enlightener, who then is the ass. Fire heats water, but water puts out fire. English Khan was great, but our policeman, so please you, is still greater. If you are first, your wife is second. If your wife is first, you had better be zero, only then will your hens be safe. If you wish to be rich, make friends with the police. If you wish to be famous, make friends with the reporters. If you wish to be full, with your mother-in-law. If you wish to have peace, with your neighbour. If you wish to sleep, with your wife. If you wish to lose your faith, with the priest. To give a fuller picture of my father's individuality, I must say something about a tendency of his nature rarely observed in contemporary people, and striking to all who knew him well. It was chiefly on account of this tendency that from the very beginning, when he became poor and had to go into business, his affairs went so badly that his friends and those who had business dealings with him considered him unpractical and even not clever in this domain. And indeed every business that my father carried on for the purpose of making money always went wrong and brought none of the results obtained by others. However, this was not because he was unpractical or lacked mental ability in this field, but only because of this tendency. This tendency of his nature, apparently acquired by him when still a child, I would define thus: an instinctive aversion to deriving personal advantage for himself from the naivety and bad luck of others. In other words, being highly honorable and honest, my father could never consciously build his own welfare on the misfortune of his neighbor. But most of those round him, being typical contemporary people, took advantage of his honesty and deliberately tried to cheat him, thus unconsciously belittling the significance of that trait in his psyche which conditions the whole of our common Father's commandments for man. Indeed, there could be ideally applied to my father the following paraphrase of a sentence from sacred writings, which is quoted at the present time by the followers of all religions everywhere, for describing the abnormalities of our daily life and for giving practical advice. Strike, and you will not be struck. But if you do not strike, they will beat you to death like Sidor's goat. In spite of the fact that he often happened to find himself in the midst of events beyond the control of man and resulting in all sorts of human calamities, and in spite of almost always encountering dirty manifestations from the people round him, manifestations recalling those of jackals, he did not lose heart, never identified himself with anything, and remained inwardly free and always himself. The absence in his external life of everything that those round him regarded as advantages did not disturb him inwardly in the least. He was ready to reconcile himself to anything, provided there were only bread and quiet during his established hours of meditation. What most displeased him was to be disturbed in the evening when he would sit in the open looking at the stars. I, for my part, can only say now that, with my whole being, I would desire to be able to be such as I knew him to be in his old age. Owing to circumstances of my life not dependent on me, I have not personally seen the grave where the body of my dear father lies, and it is unlikely that I will ever be able in the future to visit his grave. I therefore, in concluding this chapter devoted to my father, bid any of my sons, whether by blood or in spirit, to seek out, when he has the possibility, this solitary grave, abandoned by force of circumstances, ensuing chiefly from that human scourge called the herd instinct, and there to set up a stone with the inscription, I am thou, thou art I. He is ours, we both are his. So may all be for our neighbour.